Well, good day to you, Scott Baker. Happy Sunday.
Mickey Ames, indeed. How are you? It's time for another edition of Lead Better here, and we're glad that you're with us. It's field number, let's see, it's 1613, and the title is Initiating New Relationships by Finding a Common Connection. Now, a common connection, that sounds like common sense, and I think that we probably all are looking for that at some degree. That's why we kind of talk about the weather. We share a common environment a lot of the time. But this idea of finding a common connection, actually, if you just put a little bit of thought to it, a little bit of effort, might start to really help you build all of these networks of important relationships in ways that you can't even, it just becomes sort of magical. And this, I think, is probably something in your wheelhouse going back a long time.
Oh, yeah. It is kind of funny, though, the way that we end up doing it. Like, I kind of intentionally loathe talking about the weather for that reason, right?
Sure.
Number one, I don't really like small talk, right? And if you're instead going for a common connection, that means that you're trying to bypass small talk and get it into like
so something else,
the wheres and whys of what we have in common. And so it always feels like an indictment to my soul if I find myself talking about the weather, because I'm like, you're being lazy. You're just being so lazy to talk about the weather, right? And I'm thinking about that the whole time. It's like, you have to change the subject. You got to figure out how to change the subject, right? Get it off the weather. And so I think David Sedaris was the guy who I read in one of his books, who said, when I talk to cab drivers in various countries that I go to, I always ask what the dog says here in this country.
What's like the word?
Well, yeah. So he would say, like, in America, when you onomatopoeia a dog or a cow, it's bow wow or ruff ruff or moo. What is it in this country? And it's always different. It's different. Like, dogs say different things in different countries, right? So in Russia, for instance, it is guff guff. That's what the dogs say.
Yeah.
And the weird part for me is because I'm always coming in because I've loved to use this question as well, usually with an Uber driver or with taxi drivers or whatever when I'm international. And the fun part for me is introducing the question in a way that makes people think that I'm not a weirdo, which
you are, but
which is hard to do, right? Because I'm coming at it from a third language when I'm doing it. Like, so
actually, what you could say is, we say weirdo.
What's
your word?
Right, exactly. So, but it's funny to see some of it. Like, so in some Latin American countries, there is the difference between a big dog and a little dog, right? And so we say in America, bow wow sometimes for our dogs. And they're like, oh, big dogs are bow bow and little dogs are wow wow. Right. So there's different onomatopoeias for different dogs. Right. So either way, but even that is not really a connection. Like you could use that as a springboard to say, like, do you have any dogs? Right. And then we could go forever talking about somebody's dog because everyone wants to talk about their dog in some way or another. Right. But that kind of common connection is really just a springboard. That what does the dog say in your language kind of a question is really just to get to one step deeper. Right. And weather should be a transitional question. And I think that's the problem that I have with weather. It's a difficult transitional question to get into what the real connection is.
Yeah. Well, I think by the way, if weather comes up, and I usually don't bring it up, but I like to not push back, push forward. Like if somebody's like, yeah, it's just so miserable today, and I won't like correct them, but I will kind of try to kind of say, I don't know. It's an old Zig Ziglar thing, carry the weather inside you. And I think there's actually a popular song from like 20 years ago about that. Might have been Crowded House or somebody did a song like that. And so we all know that scene in Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray is talking about the mercilessly gray winter day, but he's describing it in such a poetic way, and he's quoting a famous passage of poetry, and you go, oh. And any particular day, no matter what it is, could become profound, right?
But what he's doing at his core there is he's getting himself and therefore the people around him off script. Like,
Yes, right. That's it.
we
Right.
we all have these scripts that we run on that
Yeah.
we end up just repeating.
So yeah, I was in a medical office the other day, and they had these palatial windows that you could see, and you could see clouds and the horizon and all this thing. And it was a really wonderful office, and the nurse was just saying, it's like, yeah, it's been kind of just miserable day. And I was like, but look what you get to look at. And then she was like, yeah, it is true. And I was like, yeah, look at those clouds. And I just started pointing out things. She was like, that's really wild. And so pretty soon, it had sort of changed her perspective on that.
Yes.
So we can do that with all of these things. And I love talking to Uber drivers and everything else. I remember one time before Uber being in New York and a cab driver, and I just started usually asking questions right away. I mean, if I can tell they don't want to talk, I shut up. But
Yeah.
but there were pictures that he had clipped to the visors on the front. And I was like, well, who's the visor? And he goes, oh, that's my girlfriend, and that's her son. And I was like, well, who's that woman? He goes, that's my other girlfriend. We're just getting started, right? How's this working out? How do you balance that? Where are we going? So look, in admired leadership, we've long said that leaders have certain things that they're all like. If you work for a leader, it's always good to be like, let me keep you apprised of market trends, what's going on in the organization, things I'm seeing that need improvement. I mean, leaders are always looking for those things. People in general are kind of oriented around regular themes. There's a geography aspect. There's places where they lived, where they went to school. Things that are normal conversations.
Right.
Things that like are very special places to them. And then you can also have places that that beyond geography that are particular passions or pivotal experiences. There's different kinds of activities. Now, those things tend to be only matter if we lean in. And I know a guy in Pittsburgh who was a long time, very prominent estate lawyer, and he kind of taught me that like he was always able, and he was a very significant person in his church, and he trained all of the people so that if anybody came in that church, that they were greeted. They were asked questions just naturally, like, where are you from? How far did you drive? Oh, we know some folks down there. What brought, like they would engage them, and then they would remember it, right? And so if they came back, they would remember the significant pieces about who that person is. Well, I see many other organizations, churches, gatherings where there's a stunning, if not shocking, lack of curiosity by nearly everybody in the organization. And so that's part of the thing here, which is you have an opportunity to express a curiosity about other people, but you can also develop a curious organization, much like my friend developed a curious church culture. You can have a curious culture. I don't actually, in some of the organizations that I'm in, I'm not going to name them, they are that way. They are not curious. And I watched the loss to them over years and years of their lack of curiosity about other people, even if you were demonstrating it yourself. Now, I can't really go complain because I haven't had the time in some of these organizations to go and help and change that culture. So that's on me, right? But I know what they're losing because they're not expressing this basic shared common interest idea that would start to develop those relationships in a more profound way.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction to make. Curiosity is just the tool there. It's not the end. It's not like there's all kinds of reasons that you need to develop the curiosity, but the curiosity is in service to finding the connection, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
So if you're not interested in relationship, if you're not interested in what's at the core of most relationships is good conversation, then finding connections won't be important to you, right? And therefore curiosity won't be important to you. Right. So you're using curiosity. So this notion of like, well, are you a naturally curious person? This is like our philosophy is not like you have to be curious before you're allowed to ask a question. No. The behavior is ask questions, right?
And you'll start to see how cool it is to be curious.
Yes. But once again, the curiosity is in service to genuine connection, actually finding something that you enjoy about that person. And
I'm sure you saw this in the many running camps and lots of young people. And we can be like, kids are kids. No, every kid is very unique.
Yes.
And if you start to lean in, and I'm sure you trained your people to kind of be like, how do I develop an actual relationship with this kid?
And it's funny that we ended up talking about scripts a lot, right? And so there's some children that are just naturally take you off script. And when they are able to do that with you and they're doing it naturally, then it's like, okay, you've just triggered something in me and I love this, right? And so then back to them is like, what is it about your home or your dad or your mom that causes you to take me off script so easily, right? And it's funny to try to translate that kind of question to an 11-year-old, right?
Yeah, right.
And try to get them to like understand what it is about their own life or their own family culture that makes them so different, right?
Oh yeah.
And so that's a fascinating conversation to have over and over again with 10 and 11-year-olds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I actually loved when I was a television reporter. I loved talking to kids. Some of my best stories were interviewing kids, and I've had a lot of kids. You've had a lot of kids, and so you get used to it. But even last night, I'm at a pretty sophisticated conference, but there's actually a lot of kids around at the end of the day. A lot of people brought families, and we had a big kind of dinner last night, and there were a lot of kids, and there were a couple kids at the table where I ended up sitting. I'm having a deep conversation with these guys over here. But I'm talking to these two brothers and their little sister who just kind of plopped down, and one had the hamburger, one had the hot dog, one had a certain kind of cookie, another one had another. And I was like, so give me the verdict here because I'm about to go. Is it the hot dog or the hamburger? And they got in a big argument over whether the hot dog was better or the hamburger. And then it was actually, what was really sad was that the one guy was like, yeah, I had this cookie, and the other guy said, my cookie's really good. And he goes, and yeah, my mom only told me I could have one cookie, and so I think I took the wrong one. And so we had this like deep conversation about all of this. And I'll tell you, by the way, and this kind of stuff happens to me all the time. During the conference part of the conference, a young couple came in and sat down next to me, and we just started talking about the conference and things we were interested in, and in a short amount of time, I actually recognized, and they were from California. I'm from Pittsburgh. This conference is just outside Pittsburgh, and the guy actually. It turned out, I don't know how it got to this, but he said, why are you here? And I said, I was actually supposed to be at this conference and I named an island in the Florida Keys where another conference was going on this weekend. And he said, you're not talking about this, and he named the conference. And I was like, yeah, and I named this guy who had invited me to go, who's running that conference. And he's like, and I said, do you know him? And he goes, yeah, when he first organized his organization 10 years ago, I was actually his first employee.
Oh.
Now, there's hardly any way that this guy that I know is a friend of mine who's running this conference in Florida would have happened to be, connected to this guy who came in from California for a totally topically different event.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we have a lot to talk about.
Right.
A lot. And in fact, he had spent time working in another country where I'd spent some time working. And then I'm talking to his wife, and I notice on her water bottle that she has kind of an Olympic lifting sticker. And so I've been in sort of not only the CrossFit world, Olympic lifting world for a long time. Turns out she's a very competitive, excellent Olympic lifter. There's not that many people that you can talk about in the world about the sort of the beauty of what it takes to execute a full Olympic snatch, which takes about 1 second. But I can with her. Like I could learn so much from her.
Right.
And
it's funny, the sticker that's on her water bottle is a beacon for other people
for that
who know what this sticker means, right? So anyone who decorates their water bottle is trying to make a connection with people who know, right? And that's all that it is.
And in this that like no matter who sat down next to me, I'm going to hopefully be a good conversational partner. Hopefully I'll be additive to them in some way. I would have had a good conversation with them anyway. But we had this common connection. Now I didn't know about it ahead of time, but we had a common connection and it exploded the depth of the conversation. And there's going to be more today, right? So the point of this field note is be looking for those common connections. And not in that, again, we talked about some of this the other day, but it's not about the salesiness of this. It's just look at the robustness of when you build an external network. And in fact, Naval Ravikant, who I've met and many people admire for his advice, he has a new podcast that dropped today. He does these short mini podcasts, which I love. And his new one is about curating people.
Right.
And we talk about things like that in Admired Leadership all the time, but it's like you should be a curator of your relationships for how you benefit them, how they make your life richer, and how your connection there makes you able to connect other people, because that's actually how we make the planet better.
Right. Okay, can I give you an exercise that you
Yep.
might be able to use here? So we've done it in our firm. I know some of our folks have done it, but oftentimes as a warm up, we will ask people in a room of 30, 40. We've done it with 80 people.
Right.
Pair up and find something that you have in common with your partner that you think no one else has in common with the two of you, right?
That's a good
And
one.
so I was thinking that in a conference setting, it wouldn't be weird. You might not be able to do this on an airplane or on a train, but in a conference setting, if you just say to somebody that you're sitting down with, what do you think you and I have in common with each other that we don't
nobody
have in
else
common
does?
with anybody else? You'll quickly get into some deeper stuff that allows you to find that connection as fast as possible.
Yeah. By the way, I ran into one guy at this conference who I've known for a long time, and who's actually a huge fan of Admired Leadership. In fact, one of the testimonials on our testimonial page is from him. He's been a big-time CEO, and so it was kind of fun reconnecting with him. I hadn't seen him in years.
Nice. Very cool. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Gotta
enjoy
run
it.
back to the conference.
Right. Have a great weekend. All right.
Thanks,
bye now.
Mikey.